The great chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with its usual morning energy. Representatives from dozens of worlds took their seats, preparing for another long day of debates and decisions. The massive dome overhead showed a view of distant stars, reminding everyone of the vast space they all shared. Speaker Veltar of the Dreknari stepped up to the central platform. His tall, scaled form commanded attention as he called the session to order. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of translation devices working in hundreds of languages. Today we discuss the new trade routes through the Outer Rim, Veltar announced. His voice echoed through the chamber. All representatives, please prepare your proposals. The usual routine began. Species after species stood to present their ideas. The Cetacean Alliance wanted safer shipping lanes. The Vorthan Navy demanded more patrol ships. The Reptani Empire pushed for lower taxes on their goods. But something felt different today. The debates moved faster than usual. Proposals passed without long arguments. Votes happened quickly, without the endless back-and-forth discussions that normally dragged on for hours. Counselor Brightscale of the Reptani noticed it first. "This is strange," he whispered to his aide. "Where are all the questions? Where are the amendments?" His aide looked around the chamber. "I don't know, sir. Everyone seems to agree on everything today." In the viewing gallery, Administrator Kicksmell of the Cetacean Alliance frowned. Something important was missing, but she couldn't put her finger on it. The session felt hollow, like a song with missing notes. The morning passed in record time. Trade agreements that usually took weeks to negotiate were approved in minutes. Military spending increases went through without a single objection. Territorial disputes that had lasted months were suddenly resolved with simple votes. "Remarkable efficiency today," commented Dr. Fluxstar, the chief economist. "We're finishing everything ahead of schedule." It wasn't until the lunch break that someone finally noticed what was wrong. "Has anyone seen the human delegation today?" asked Counselor Kicksmell. She stood in the cafeteria, looking around at the various species enjoying their meals. The question spread quickly through the room. Delegates looked at each other with growing confusion. "Now that you mention it, no," said Captain Zilfex of the Mindari Collective. Ambassador Tejo wasn't in his usual seat. Neither was Dr. Yansu, added another voice. Or Engineer Ho Jin. A strange quiet fell over the cafeteria. For 30 years, humans had been the most active species in the council. They asked more questions than anyone else. They proposed more amendments. They demanded more detailed explanations for every decision. Many delegates had found them annoying. Humans always wanted to discuss everything to death. They never just accepted simple answers. They made every session longer with their endless debates and concerns. But now, without them, something felt terribly wrong. "Maybe they're just late," suggested someone. "Or maybe they're sick," offered another. But deep down, everyone knew something bigger was happening. After lunch, Veltar checked the attendance records. The human delegation had been marked absent without any explanation. No message, no emergency notice, no request for delayed arrival. "Contact the human embassy," Veltar ordered his staff. The response came back quickly. The embassy building was sealed. All staff had left. A simple message displayed on the main entrance. "Humanity thanks the Council for its guidance. We withdraw our membership effective immediately." The news hit the chamber like a shockwave. Delegates whispered frantically to each other. Aides rushed back and forth with messages. The afternoon session nearly fell apart as everyone tried to understand what had happened. "This must be some kind of mistake," declared Admiral Kextron of the Vorthan Navy. "Humans don't just leave. They argue about everything. They would have debated this decision for months, but the evidence was clear. Every human representative was gone. Their offices were empty. Their ships had left the station. Even their personal belongings had been removed. "Check the human colonies," ordered Veltar. "Send messages to Earth, to New Korea, to all their settlements. Find out what's happening." The responses came back over the next few hours. Every human world reported the same thing: silence. No communications from the council delegation. No explanations for the withdrawal. Just quiet acceptance of the decision. As evening approached, the reality began to sink in. Humanity had left the Galactic Council, and they had done it without a single argument or debate. For a species known for questioning everything, they had made their biggest decision in complete silence. "How do we proceed?" asked Counselor Brightscale. Veltar looked around the chamber. For the first time in decades, every remaining species agreed on something. They had no idea what to do next. "We continue," Veltar said finally. "We are the Galactic Council. We will adapt." But as the delegates filed out of the chamber that evening, many of them felt a strange emptiness. The sessions had been smoother today, yes. Decisions had been made faster. But something vital had been lost. In her private office, Counselor Kixmel stared out at the stars. She remembered countless debates with Ambassador Tejo. He had always asked the hard questions. He had always pushed for more details, more evidence, more consideration of consequences. She had found it irritating at the time. Now she realized those questions had been important. Those debates had made better decisions. Those long discussions had prevented mistakes. "What have we done?" she whispered to the empty room. Across the station, other delegates were having similar thoughts. Dr. Fluxstar reviewed the day's decisions and found them all technically correct, but somehow incomplete. Admiral Kextron wondered why the military spending had passed so easily, when humans always raised good points about waste and efficiency. Captain Zilfex sat in his quarters, thinking about his research partner, Dr. Yansu. She had left behind half-finished projects and promising theories. Her last report had been submitted just 3 days ago, showing no signs that she planned to leave. The station felt different that night. Quieter, emptier. The human quarter stood dark and abandoned. Restaurants that had served human food closed their doors. Shops that sold human goods wondered what to do with their inventory. But the strangest thing was the silence itself. For 30 years, humans had been the loudest voices in the council. They had filled the airwaves with communications, proposals, complaints, and suggestions. They had made noise wherever they went. Now they were gone. And they had left without making a sound. As the artificial night cycle began on the station, emergency meetings started in conference rooms across the complex. Species leaders tried to understand what had happened and what it meant for the future. But no one had answers. Humanity had simply vanished from galactic politics as quietly as morning mist. And for the first time in 3 decades, the Galactic Council was truly speechless. The great chamber stood empty now, its seats waiting for tomorrow's session. But everyone knew that tomorrow would be different. The questions that should be asked would go unasked. The debates that should happen would never begin. The voice that had challenged them all to be better was gone, and in that silence the first seeds of doubt began to grow. What if the humans had been right about more things than anyone wanted to admit? What if their constant questions had been protecting the galaxy from something terrible? But those were thoughts for another day. Tonight the council slept uneasily, haunted by the sound of silence where there should have been voices raised in passionate debate. 3 days passed before the Galactic Council organized its response. Admiral Kextron stood before a war room filled with the galaxy's best military minds. Maps of human space covered every wall, marked with red dots showing colonies, stations, and outposts. "We need to find them," Kextron declared. "An entire species doesn't just disappear. They must be somewhere." The search began immediately. Fourth-hand warships jumped to human colonies across the galaxy. Dragnari scouts checked trade routes. Cetacean deep space sensors scanned for any sign of human activity. The first reports came back within hours, and they made no sense. "Sir?" called Lieutenant Torval from his communication station. "We've reached New Sol Colony." "The settlement is intact. What do you mean, intact?" Kextron asked. "Everything is still running, sir. The lights are on. The factories are working. The defense systems are active. But there are no people." Similar reports flooded in from across human space. Every colony, every station, every outpost was the same. Empty but operational. Abandoned but maintained. Captain Zilfex led the team that investigated Luna Base, humanity's oldest research station. Walking through the corridors felt like exploring a ghost ship. The air recycling systems hummed quietly. Automated cleaning robots moved through the halls. Computer terminals showed active research projects, but not a single human remained. "Look at this," called Dr. Mordex, Zilfex's science officer. "This coffee is still warm." They stood in what had been Engineer Hojin's workshop. Tools lay scattered across workbenches as if he had just stepped away for a moment. Half-built devices sat waiting for completion. Personal photos showed Hojin with his family, smiling and happy. He was working on something big, Zilfex observed, studying the blueprints on Hojin's desk. These designs are years ahead of anything we've seen. The workshop told a story of sudden departure. No time to pack up projects or secure equipment. No signs of struggle or panic. Just empty chairs and abandoned work. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On farming colony Taiyang, crops grew in perfect rows while automated harvesters continued their work. The farmer families were gone, but they had left their fields in perfect condition. On the trading station Harmony Point, Captain Woljin's office remained exactly as he had left it. His schedule showed meetings planned for the next 3 months. His desk held family pictures and personal items. His computer was still logged in, displaying shipping manifests and trade agreements. It's like they all just vanished, reported Commander Six then. But they took time to secure everything. First, the mystery deepened as investigators found more clues. Dr. Yansu's laboratory on research, Station Alpha, contained detailed notes about something called Project Silent Wing. The notes were technical and complex, but they seemed to describe some kind of massive transportation system. What is Silent Wing? Asked Veltar during the daily briefing. We don't know, admitted Intelligence Chief Dimmemer. The files are incomplete. It appears to be some kind of theoretical research into advanced propulsion systems. Theoretical? That's what makes this strange, sir. The research was marked as experimental only. There were no signs of actual construction or testing, but other evidence suggested otherwise. Deep space monitors had detected unusual energy readings in the days before humanity's departure. Massive power signatures that appeared briefly and then vanished. Gravitational distortions that lasted only minutes. They built something, concluded Chief Scientist Quarthak. Something big enough to move entire populations. The scope of the departure became clearer each day. Early estimates suggested that over 50 billion humans had vanished simultaneously. Not just from Council space, but from every known human settlement in the galaxy. How is that even possible? Demanded Counselor Brightscale. Moving that many people would require a fleet larger than anything that exists. Maybe they didn't use ships, suggested Dr. Fluxstar. Maybe they found another way. The economic impact was already becoming clear. Human trade routes carried nearly 30% of all galactic commerce. Without human merchants and shippers, supply chains began to break down. Prices for common goods started rising as shortages developed. More troubling were the technological gaps. Humans had been involved in almost every major research project in the galaxy. Their sudden absence left thousands of projects incomplete and millions of questions unanswered. We're starting to realize how much we depended on them. Admiral Kextron admitted to his staff. They weren't just members of the Council. They were partners in everything we did. The search teams continued their work, but each new discovery only deepened the mystery. On the industrial world of Busan 7, massive factories stood empty but still producing goods. Automated systems continued manufacturing products according to schedules set months in advance. They planned this carefully, observed Inspector Wydal. This wasn't a panic evacuation. They prepared for months, maybe years. Evidence supported this theory. Shipping records showed that humans had been gradually moving resources and equipment away from public projects. Research files revealed backup plans for maintaining automated systems. Personnel records showed careful timing of project completions and transitions. They were saying goodbye, realized Counselor Kicksmell as she reviewed the data. They finished their commitments, secured their work, and left everything in good order. But where had they gone? Long-range scanners found no trace of human ships in known space. No emergency beacons, no distress signals, no communication attempts. It was as if 50 billion people had simply stepped out of reality. Maybe they didn't leave, suggested Dr. Mordex. Maybe they're hiding somewhere we haven't looked. Search teams checked asteroid belts, empty star systems, and abandoned sectors. They found nothing. No hidden bases, no secret colonies, no signs of human presence anywhere in the galaxy. They're gone, Kextron finally admitted. Completely gone. The admission sent shockwaves through the Council. For the first time in galactic history, an entire species had vanished without explanation. Not through war, disaster, or disease, but through their own choice. What did we do wrong? Asked Veltar during a private meeting of senior leaders. No one had an answer. Relations with humanity had been normal. There had been the usual diplomatic disagreements, but nothing serious. No major conflicts, no broken treaties, no reasons for such a drastic action. Maybe that's the problem, suggested Kicksmell quietly. Maybe normal wasn't good enough. As the search continued into its second week, a disturbing pattern emerged. Every human facility, every abandoned office, every empty laboratory told the same story. Humans had been working on projects far more advanced than anyone realized. Dr. Yansu's research into quantum mechanics was decades ahead of current understanding. Engineer Hojin's manufacturing designs could revolutionize production across the galaxy. Captain Waljin's logistics algorithms could solve transportation problems that had puzzled experts for years. They were holding back, realized Chief Scientist Korthak. They could have solved problems we're still struggling with. Why would they do that? Asked Veltar. Korthak studied the abandoned research files. Maybe because we never asked. Maybe because we never listened. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just been active members of the galactic community. They had been the driving force behind technological progress and innovation. Their departure left gaping holes in research projects, commercial ventures, and diplomatic initiatives. We need to find them, declared Kextron. Whatever it takes, wherever they've gone, we need to bring them back. But as the search expanded beyond known space, hope began to fade. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had clearly prepared for this moment far better than anyone imagined. In the empty human embassy, automated systems continued broadcasting the same simple message. Humanity thanks the Council for its guidance. We withdraw our membership effective immediately. No demands, no complaints, no explanations. Just a polite farewell and eternal silence. The search would continue, but deep down, everyone was beginning to understand a terrible truth. Humanity hadn't just left the Council. They had left the galaxy itself, taking with them knowledge, capabilities, and possibilities that the remaining species were only beginning to appreciate. And they had done it all without making a sound. 3 months had passed since humanity's departure, and the galaxy was beginning to crack. Dr. Fluxstar stood before the Emergency Economic Council, his hands shaking as he held the latest reports. The numbers were worse than anyone had imagined. Trade volume is down 47%, he announced to the worried faces around the table. Supply chains are collapsing faster than we can rebuild them. The room fell silent. Even the most optimistic projections hadn't predicted such rapid decline. How is that possible? Demanded Counselor Brightscale. Humans were only one species among dozens. That's what we thought, Fluxstar replied sadly. But they were involved in everything. They didn't just participate in trade routes, they designed them. They didn't just use supply chains, they created them. The evidence was everywhere. Without human logistics experts, cargo ships sat in ports while goods rotted in warehouses. Without human mediators, trade disputes dragged on for weeks instead of days. Without human innovation, new products stopped appearing in markets. Admiral Kextron's military reports were equally grim. We're seeing conflicts break out across the Outer Rim, he told the Security Council. Species that have been peaceful for decades are fighting over resources. What kind of conflicts? Asked Veltar. The Reptani and Vorthon are arguing over mining rights on Kepler 442b. The Cetacean Alliance is blocking Draknari ships from using their trade routes. 3 different species claim ownership of the same star system. These weren't new problems. The same disputes had existed for years. But now, without human peacekeepers and negotiators, small disagreements were becoming major crises. Humans always found solutions, admitted Counselor Kicksmell. They had a way of making everyone feel heard, even when they didn't get what they wanted. The diplomatic corps was struggling without human translators who understood not just languages, but cultures. Business deals fell apart without human lawyers who knew how to write contracts that satisfied all parties. Scientific conferences became shouting matches without human moderators who knew how to keep discussions productive. But the real shock came when Chief Scientist Korthak presented his technology assessment. We've lost more than people, he told the packed auditorium. We've lost our future. He displayed holographic charts showing research progress over the past 30 years. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Every major breakthrough had human involvement. Every significant innovation had come from human-led projects or human-inspired research. Look at medical technology, Korthak continued. The cure for Vorthon fever came from Dr. Miran's research. The neural interface that helps Draknari communicate with computers was invented by Dr. Jae Won. The fusion reactors that power our cities were designed by engineer Dong Hyun. The list went on and on. Humans hadn't just contributed to galactic science, they had driven it forward. Without them, progress had not just slowed, it had stopped completely. "What about their abandoned research?" asked someone from the audience. "That's the problem," Korthak admitted. "We can read their notes, but we can't understand their thinking. We can see their designs, but we can't improve them. We can copy their work, but we can't continue it." This revelation hit the council like a physical blow. They had always seen humans as clever and hardworking, but not necessarily superior to other species. Now they were discovering that human intelligence worked differently, solving problems that other species couldn't even recognize. Dr. Mordex had spent weeks studying Dr. Yansu's quantum research. "Her approach to theoretical physics is completely unique," he reported. "She saw connections between concepts that we never noticed. Her theories could have revolutionized our understanding of space and time." Similar stories emerged from every field. Human economists had developed models that predicted market crashes before they happened. Human engineers had designed systems that were more efficient than anything other species could imagine. Human artists had created works that inspired new ways of thinking across the galaxy. "We took them for granted," Veltar admitted during a private meeting with his senior staff. "We thought they were just another member species." "They were more than that," replied Intelligence Chief Dimmer. "They were the glue that held everything together." Evidence for this was growing daily. Without human mediators, the council sessions had become chaotic. Species that had worked together for decades were now fighting over basic procedures. Votes that should take minutes stretched into hours of angry debate. "Remember how smoothly things went that first day after they left?" asked Councillor Kicksmell. "We thought it was efficient. Now I realize it was just the calm before the storm." The economic crisis was spreading beyond simple trade problems. Innovation had stopped, which meant new solutions weren't being developed for old problems. Environmental issues that human scientists had been working on were getting worse. Social problems that human sociologists had been studying were tearing communities apart. "They were our early warning system," realized Dr. Fluxstar. "They spotted problems before anyone else did." Looking back at old council records, the pattern was clear. Humans had opposed the mining project on Kepler 442b that was now causing environmental disasters. They had warned against the banking deregulation that led to the current financial crisis. They had predicted the resource conflicts that were now breaking out across the galaxy. "We didn't listen," Brightscale said bitterly. "Every time they warned us about something, we ignored them." "Worse than that," added Kicksmell. "We got annoyed with them for bringing up problems we didn't want to face." The psychological impact was devastating. Species that had prided themselves on their intelligence and capabilities were discovering they had been dependent on human guidance for decades. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations felt like children who had lost their parents. Captain Zilfex found himself visiting Dr. Yansu's abandoned laboratory every day. The empty rooms felt like a shrine to lost possibilities. Her research equipment sat unused, her theories remained unfinished, her dreams of scientific progress slowly gathered dust. "She was working on something revolutionary," he told his team. "The math is beyond anything I understand, but the implications are staggering. She might have found a way to travel faster than light itself. But without Dr. Yansu to explain her work, the research was meaningless. Other scientists could read her equations but couldn't understand her logic. They could see her conclusions but couldn't follow her reasoning. It's like trying to read poetry in a language you don't speak," explained Dr. Mordex. "The words are there, but the meaning is lost." Similar situations existed across the galaxy. Engineer Hojin's manufacturing designs promised incredible efficiency improvements, but no one could figure out how to implement them. Captain Woljin's shipping algorithms could solve transportation problems, but their complexity defeated the best programmers. They were operating on a different level, admitted Chief Scientist Korthak. "We thought we were equals, but we were students." The social problems were becoming just as serious as the economic ones. Without human cultural advisors, diplomatic receptions turned into disasters. Without human social workers, community programs fell apart. Without human teachers, educational exchanges between species ended in confusion and hurt feelings. "Humans understood everyone," observed Councillor Kicksmell. "They could talk to Draknari warriors and cetacean philosophers with equal ease. They made us all feel comfortable with each other. Now, without that human bridge between cultures, species were withdrawing into themselves. Old prejudices were returning." Cooperation was being replaced by suspicion and competition. The military situation was becoming critical. Admiral Kextron reported 3 major conflicts brewing, and several minor wars already started. "We're losing the peace," he told the Security Council. "What do you mean?" asked Veltar. "For 30 years, humans prevented wars before they started. They negotiated treaties, mediated disputes, and found compromises that satisfied everyone. Now, without them, old rivalries are coming back. The Vorthan Empire was building new warships. The Reptani Confederation was expanding its military bases. The Draknari were hiring mercenaries and training larger armies. Everyone was preparing for conflicts that human diplomats would have prevented. "We need to find them," declared Brightscale during an emergency session. "Whatever it takes, wherever they are, we must bring them back." But the search had found nothing. Long-range sensors detected no human ships, no human signals, no human presence anywhere in known space. It was as if 50 billion people had simply ceased to exist. "Maybe they don't want to be found," suggested Kixmel quietly. The thought hung in the air like a dark cloud. What if humanity's departure hadn't been a mistake or a misunderstanding? What if they had chosen to leave because they were tired of trying to help species that wouldn't listen? As the crisis deepened, more species began questioning their own role in humanity's decision. The Mindari Collective admitted they had often dismissed human concerns as overcautious. The Vorthan Navy acknowledged they had resented human interference in military matters. The Reptani Empire confessed they had seen human mediation as weakness. "We pushed them away," Veltar finally admitted. "We made them feel unwanted." The galaxy was learning a hard lesson about the difference between participation and leadership. Humans hadn't just been members of the Galactic 6 months after humanity's departure. Archivist Zephylos made a discovery that would haunt the galaxy forever. The ancient keeper of records had spent his entire life managing the Council's vast database of decisions, votes, and debates. With over 400 years of experience, he knew the archives better than anyone alive. But what he found buried in the historical records made his blood run cold. "Speaker Veltar," Zephylos called, his voice trembling over the communication system. "You need to see this immediately." Veltar arrived at the archives to find Zephylos surrounded by holographic displays showing decades of council voting records. Charts and graphs filled the air, all pointing to the same terrible conclusion. "I've been analyzing every major decision made in the past 30 years, Zephylos explained. "I wanted to understand what we lost when humanity left. But what I found is far worse than I imagined." He activated the first display. "This shows every proposal that humans opposed and what happened afterward." The pattern was undeniable. The mining rights on Kepler 442b that humans had fought against for months, the planet was now an ecological disaster, its atmosphere poisoned by toxic chemicals. The financial deregulation that humans had warned would cause market instability. It had led to the economic crisis currently devastating the galaxy. "Every single time," Zephylos continued, his voice growing quieter, "every time humans opposed something, they were right." More examples followed. The military expansion into the neutral zone that humans had called aggressive and dangerous. It had triggered the current conflicts with 3 separate species. The experimental AI project that Dr. Miran had warned was unsafe. It had resulted in the catastrophic uprising on Tau Ceti that killed millions. "This can't be coincidence," Veltar whispered. "It gets worse," Zephylos replied. He activated another set of displays. "This shows every proposal that humans supported and how long it took us to implement them." The second pattern was even more damning. The Frontier Protection Act that Ambassador Tejo had championed for years. The Council finally passed it last month, too late to prevent 3 wars. The medical research funding that Dr. Yansu had requested repeatedly, it was approved just weeks ago after disease outbreaks on dozen worlds. "We were always 5 steps behind them," Zephylos observed. "They could see problems coming years before we recognized them. They could see solutions that we couldn't imagine." Veltar studied the data with growing horror. "How many disasters could we have prevented if we had just listened?" "All of them," Zephylos answered simply. The archives contained 30 years of human wisdom ignored, human warnings dismissed, human solutions rejected. Every major crisis facing the galaxy had been predicted by human experts. Every current problem had been addressed in human proposals that the Council had voted down. Dr. Miran's medical research, consistently underfunded despite her remarkable track record, could have prevented the pandemic that was now spreading through Vorthan space. Engineer Dong Hyun's infrastructure proposals, rejected as too expensive, would have prevented the transportation collapse crippling the outer rim. They tried to help us, Veltar realized. They spent 30 years trying to save us from ourselves. The most painful discoveries came from the personal files. Ambassador Taeho's private diplomatic notes revealed his growing frustration with the Council's short-sighted decisions. Dr. Yeonsu's research proposals showed increasingly desperate attempts to address problems that other species refused to acknowledge. "Look at this," Zephylos said, displaying Captain Wol Jin's shipping reports. He predicted the supply chain collapse 2 years ago. He wrote detailed warnings about bottlenecks and vulnerabilities. The Logistics Committee filed his reports without reading them. Similar stories emerged from every department. Human experts had written warnings about environmental disasters, economic crashes, social unrest, and military conflicts. Their reports had been filed away. Their meetings had been postponed. Their recommendations had been ignored. "We thought they were being overcautious," Veltar admitted. "We thought they worried too much about things that might never happen. But they always happened," Zephylos replied. Every single prediction came true. The scope of human foresight was staggering. They hadn't just been good at solving immediate problems, they had been able to see consequences that stretched decades into the future. Their understanding of complex systems and long-term cause and effect was beyond anything other species possessed. Chief Scientist Korthak was called in to review the scientific data. What he found shook his faith in his own intelligence. Human research was consistently 50 years ahead of everyone else, he reported to the Emergency Science Council. Not just in specific fields, but across every discipline. Dr. Jaewon's computer science work had laid the foundation for technologies that other species were only now beginning to develop. Dr. So Young's materials research had solved problems that current scientists didn't even know existed. Engineer Ho Jin's energy systems were more efficient than anything currently in use anywhere in the galaxy. They weren't just smart, Korthak continued. They thought differently. They saw connections that we couldn't see. They understood relationships between ideas that we couldn't imagine. The psychological profiles were equally revealing. Human emotional intelligence had been vastly superior to other species. They could understand motivations, predict behavior, and design solutions that satisfied everyone involved. Their diplomatic successes hadn't been luck. They had been the result of deep understanding of psychology and sociology. No wonder they were such good mediators, observed Counselor Kicksmell. They could see what everyone needed, even when we couldn't see it ourselves. But the most devastating discovery came from the final human communications before their departure. Hidden in encrypted files and personal messages were glimpses of humanity's true feelings about their role in the galaxy. Ambassador Taeho's final diplomatic report, submitted just days before the departure, was a masterpiece of restrained disappointment. Without directly criticizing anyone, he documented 30 years of warnings ignored, advice rejected, and wisdom dismissed. "We have provided our perspective on galactic affairs for 3 decades, he had written. "We believe our contributions have been honest and well-intentioned. We hope the galaxy will find its own path to prosperity and peace." The language was diplomatic and polite, but the message was clear. Humanity had given up on trying to help species that wouldn't listen. Dr. Yeonsu's personal research notes were even more revealing. "The galaxy faces challenges that require long-term thinking and cooperative solutions," she had written. "Unfortunately, the political structure of the Council makes such approaches impossible. Perhaps it is time to seek new environments where scientific progress can flourish." Engineer Ho Jin's final project report contained a single devastating sentence. "The gap between what is possible and what is politically acceptable has become too large to bridge." These weren't angry departures or bitter resignations. They were the calm, reasoned decisions of a species that had tried everything they could think of to help their neighbors, only to be consistently rebuffed and ignored. They didn't leave in anger, Veltar realized as he read through the files. They left in sadness. The evidence painted a picture of a species that had spent decades trying to guide the galaxy toward a better future. They had shared their knowledge freely, offered their expertise generously, and provided their wisdom constantly. And in return, they had been treated as just another voice in the crowd. "We made them feel unwanted," admitted Counselor Brightscale. "We made them feel like their contributions didn't matter. The final piece of the puzzle came from an encrypted message found in the human embassy's communication logs. It was addressed to the entire galaxy, but it had never been sent. To our friends and colleagues across the galaxy, the message began. We have shared the stars with you for 30 years, and we are grateful for the experience. We have learned much from all of you, and we hope we have contributed something valuable in return. The message went on to thank each species individually for their unique contributions to galactic civilization. It praised Draknari courage, Vorthon efficiency, Cetacean wisdom, and Reptani determination. It was a love letter to the galaxy, written by a species that was saying goodbye. We have decided to seek new horizons and explore possibilities beyond current galactic boundaries. The message continued. This decision brings us great sadness as we will miss our friends and colleagues. But we believe it is the right choice for humanity's future. The message ended with a promise. If the galaxy ever needs us, and if you are willing to listen to what we have learned, we will consider returning. Until then, we wish you all prosperity, peace, and happiness among the stars. The message had been written but never sent. Humanity had chosen to leave quietly rather than explain their decision. They had preferred to be misunderstood rather than cause pain or embarrassment to their former colleagues. They protected our feelings even as they left us, Kixmel observed, tears streaming down her face. The terrible truth was now complete. Humanity hadn't left because of anger. 1 year after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council chamber looked like a shadow of its former self. Half the seats sat empty as 3 member species had withdrawn following economic collapse. The Mindari Collective had retreated to their home systems after their trade empire crumbled. The Tau Coalition had dissolved entirely when civil war broke out over resource distribution. The Neutral Zone Alliance had simply stopped sending representatives when they could no longer afford the travel costs. Speaker Veltar stood at the central podium, reading reports that grew worse each day. His once proud voice had become tired and hollow. The Vorthon-Dreknari War has entered its 5th month, he announced to the sparse crowd of remaining delegates. Casualty reports indicate over 2 million dead on both sides. The war that human peacekeepers would have prevented in a single week of negotiations had become the bloodiest conflict in modern galactic history. Without human mediators to find compromise solutions, old territorial disputes had exploded into open warfare. Trade volume is down 78% from pre-departure levels. Veltar continued. Supply chains remain critically disrupted across all sectors. What had started as shipping delays had become total economic breakdown. Colonies were running out of basic supplies. Industrial worlds couldn't get raw materials. Agricultural planets couldn't transport their harvests. The complex web of galactic commerce, built up over centuries, had unraveled in just 12 months. Admiral Kextron's military reports were equally grim. We've lost effective control of the Outer Rim, he told the Security Council. Piracy is up 400%. 6 systems have declared independence. The frontier territories are reverting to lawlessness. Without human patrol ships and peacekeeping forces, the galaxy's remote regions had become dangerous chaos. Pirates raided with impunity. Warlords carved out private kingdoms. Refugees fled toward the core worlds, overwhelming already strained resources. But the technological regression was perhaps the most devastating change. Chief Scientist Korthak presented his annual research report to a nearly empty auditorium. Scientific progress has not just stopped, he announced sadly. We're actually going backward. Without human innovation driving development forward, research had ground to a halt. Worse, existing technologies were failing as automated systems broke down and no one could repair them. The galaxy was slowly losing capabilities that had taken decades to develop. We can't maintain the infrastructure humans built, Korthak explained. Their designs were too advanced for us to understand. As systems fail, we're replacing them with inferior alternatives. Power grids were becoming less efficient. Transportation networks were slowing down. Communication systems were losing range and clarity. The galaxy was experiencing technological decay on a massive scale. Dr. Mordex had spent the entire year trying to understand Dr. Yeon Su's quantum research. I can read her equations, he reported, but I can't extend her work. It's like trying to continue a symphony when you can't read music. Similar problems existed across every scientific field. Human advances in medicine, engineering, agriculture, and manufacturing were slowly being lost as the knowledge needed to maintain them disappeared with their creators. The social fabric of galactic civilization was also unraveling. Without human cultural bridges, species were withdrawing into isolated communities. The cosmopolitan mixing that had characterized the golden age of the Council was being replaced by suspicious nationalism. We're seeing racism return to levels not seen in centuries, reported social coordinator Nixval. Species that worked together for decades are now viewing each other as threats. The psychological impact was equally severe. The confident, optimistic spirit that had characterized galactic civilization was being replaced by fear and despair. Without human encouragement and support, other species were losing faith in their own abilities. Humans made us believe we could solve any problem, observed Counselor Kicksmell during a rare moment of honesty. Without them, we're discovering how limited we really are. The council sessions had become exercises in futility. Without human expertise to guide discussions, debates went in circles. Without human compromise proposals, votes ended in deadlock. Without human vision to inspire cooperation, the remaining species focused on protecting their own interests. We can't govern, Veltar admitted privately to his staff. We can maintain basic functions, but we can't solve problems or plan for the future. The search for humanity had continued throughout the year, but it had found nothing. Long-range expeditions had explored empty star systems and distant galaxies without discovering any trace of human presence. It was as if 50 billion people had simply vanished from the universe. Maybe they found a way to leave this galaxy entirely, suggested Intelligence Chief Dimmer. Their final research projects were exploring concepts we can't even understand. Then, on the exact anniversary of humanity's departure, something extraordinary happened. A single message appeared on every communication system in the galaxy simultaneously. No transmission source, no relay stations, no explanation for how it had been delivered. It simply appeared everywhere at once, in perfect translation for every species and language. The message was from So Young, Captain Woljan's daughter. To our former friends in the galaxy, the message began. We hope you are well, though we know from observation that you are struggling. The casual mention of observation sent chills through every intelligence agency in the galaxy. Somehow humanity was watching. They knew what was happening, but they remained hidden and unreachable. We want you to know that our departure was not meant as punishment or revenge, So Young's message continued. We left because we realized that our presence was preventing you from learning important lessons. The words hit like physical blows. Humanity hadn't just abandoned the galaxy. They had done it intentionally, believing that their absence would somehow benefit the species they left behind. For 30 years, we tried to help by providing solutions to your problems, the message explained. But we realized that giving you answers was preventing you from developing your own wisdom. We were making you dependent instead of making you stronger. The logic was devastating in its clarity. By always providing solutions, humanity had prevented other species from learning to solve problems themselves. By always mediating disputes, they had prevented others from developing diplomatic skills. By always leading research, they had prevented others from becoming true innovators. We hoped that our absence would force you to grow, So Young continued. We believed that facing challenges without our help would make you more capable and self-reliant. But the plan had failed catastrophically. Instead of growing stronger, the galaxy had collapsed without human support. Instead of developing independence, other species had simply fallen apart. We realize now that we were wrong, the message admitted. Our departure has caused suffering that we never intended. We underestimated how much you had come to rely on our guidance. The admission was both heartbreaking and terrifying. Humanity had left on purpose, believing it would help. Now they were acknowledging that their decision had been a terrible mistake. We have found new worlds beyond the edge of this galaxy, So Young revealed. Worlds where we can grow and explore without the constraints of established civilization. But we have not forgotten our old friends. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not just hidden, they had left the galaxy entirely. They had found some way to travel to distant galactic clusters, places so far away that they might as well be in a different universe. The knowledge we have gained in our travels has shown us possibilities we never imagined, the message continued. We have learned to manipulate space and time in ways that seemed impossible just 1 year ago. We have discovered technologies that make our old achievements look primitive. The galaxy had lost not just its wisest species, but had driven them to become something far beyond what they had been. While galactic civilization crumbled, humanity had evolved into something unrecognizable. But knowledge without compassion is worthless. So Young's message concluded. We cannot enjoy our discoveries while our old friends suffer. Therefore, we make this offer. The entire galaxy held its breath. If you are willing to accept us as equals rather than leaders, if you are ready to work together rather than depend on us for solutions, if you can promise to listen to all voices rather than just the loudest ones, we will consider returning. The conditions were clear and reasonable, but they might as well have been impossible. The galaxy had tried for a year to function without human leadership, and had failed completely. The remaining species had proven they couldn't cooperate, couldn't innovate, and couldn't govern themselves effectively. We will monitor your progress, the message ended. When you are ready to be true partners rather than dependent children, we will know. Until then, we wish you strength, wisdom, and the courage to become the species you are capable of being. The message ended as mysteriously as it had begun, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. In the council chamber, the few remaining delegates stared at each other with a mixture of hope and despair. Humanity was alive and thriving somewhere beyond the stars. They had become something magnificent and powerful.